Hello and welcome to episode 102 of Stitched in Sweden. I'm Maria and you can find me most places on the internet as Stitched in Sweden. I'm Stitched in Sweden on Ravelry, Instagram, Patreon, Ko-Fi, and here on YouTube. This week I'm going to be sharing with you both some knitting finished objects and works in progresses, and a sewing finished object and some lightly started works in progress for sewing, as well as a little bit of plans. I just wanted to start out by letting you know what I've been sharing over on Patreon this week. This week on Patreon I've gone into a little more in depth on my project planning process with some fabrics that I received in the mail from Minerva.com. And in that video I kind of go through my thought process in terms of what I'm planning on making, how I think it's going to work out, and just sort of, yeah, in general, the thought process on those projects. This week I'm also sharing the process of painting the mural in Nora's room, and next week will be the final reveal of her finished room setup. So I'd love it if you join me over there. You can find the links in the description below. This week the Pop Rocks sweater has been released, and it is my newest pattern that is a children's sweater that can be knit out of one skein of fingering weight yarn, 100 grams, plus an additional contrast color. I knit one for Eloise in the largest size, which is the 4 to 5 year old size, using one skein of Spun Right Round Classic Sock in this bright pink variegated yarn, and then I held that together with Arwetta, which is 80% merino, 20% nylon fingering weight yarn, and I used 150 grams of that. So the cuffs and the hem and neckband are held double with, well, the yarn is held double throughout the sweater, but the cuffs, neckband, and hem are double of the contrast color, and then the main color of the variegated yarn is held double with the contrast color throughout the body of the sweater, and that makes it so that the kind of single special skein of sock yarn can go farther, and you can make a whole little children's garment out of, yeah, like your one special skein of fingering weight. This sweater was a lot of fun to knit, and it's a lot of fun to kind of think about different yarn combinations that you could use. The test knitters that I had for this pattern were so great and provided a lot of really useful feedback on the pattern, and their sweaters turned out beautifully. You can see many of them over on Ravelry right now. Pop Rocks is the name of the pattern, and you can look in the projects and see their sweaters there. The size range is from 3 to 6 months all the way up to 4 to 5 years, and with any of my children's patterns, the age bracket sizing is just a guideline, especially if you don't have a child to measure yourself, like if you're making it for someone else or you're knitting a size for your child in the future. You can use those age ranges as a guideline, but there's also a actual chest circumference measurement in there, and it's best if you actually measure the child and don't knit it completely based on the age, because obviously children are different sizes at different ages. But I still put that in there in case, yeah, you're knitting for someone else or you need to have that kind of as a guideline. Yeah, you can get that in my Ravelry shop right now. Patrons always have 20% off in my shop, and I just can't wait to see what yarn combinations you come up with. I think that I might have to knit another one for the next baby coming up. I have so many little sweaters which is just really fun that they get, oh yeah, my daughters have all gotten to wear them. It's very tempting to make another little one, even though I probably don't need another sweater in that small size, but I might go for it anyway. So yeah, the Pop Rock sweater, thank you for all my test knitters, and you can find that on Ravelry with the link below. Let's start out with what I have finished this week for knitting. I have finished my sweater number 18 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. I'm wearing it right now. I really like this sweater. It is so cozy, so warm, and I'm just really happy with how it turned out. I've also been talking on my Patreon kind of how I'm sort of trying to explore some different styles, both with like shapes and mostly, I guess I would say mostly with like shape and fit of garments. And I'm trying to explore shapes that are what I'm calling comfort zone adjacent. So I honestly, I don't think there's any reason to be completely out of your comfort zone. A lot of times people say that, oh, this is a color that's way out of my color zone, or this is something that, yeah, you have a comfort zone, I think, for a reason. If you're comfortable wearing a certain shape or style or color, then like go for it, because that's what you like. It's sometimes fun, I think, to explore things that are close to your comfort zone, maybe not way outside your comfort zone, but something with elements that you like that are kind of like safe elements, and then some things that maybe are a little bit new. So for this sweater, for example, I thought I would go with something that was in sort of a safe color, so nothing too crazy, in a kind of calm pattern. That's something that's just like, this has an overall texture. And then that would allow me to try one thing that was new with this sweater, which is the fit, which is much more of an oversized fit than I typically gravitate toward. I'm still pregnant, so I don't know how I'm going to feel in this sweater once I'm not pregnant, but I am feeling very good in it right now. So I'll just kind of stand up so you can get an overall view of it. But as you can see, there's quite a bit of positive ease in the sweater. But like, it still sits kind of like nicely, especially at the shoulder. I think it has like a fitted, not fitted look, but it has like a well-structured, well-tailored look to it, rather than just being like a flop of a sweater, which I don't like that aspect of oversized looks for myself. So I'm happy with the amount of fabric right now, and that it doesn't feel like I'm just drowning in the fabric. I really like the shoulder line kind of here. I think that looks cool with the way that the rib detail is there, and it's just like a nice clean look. The neckline is really nice and polished, and the neck is a little bit of a, I wouldn't call it a modification per se, but I did change the way that I finished the inside of the neckline. Neck is one of the last parts that you do. I did the back and then the fronts, and then I did the neck, and then I did the sleeves, because I like doing the neck as soon as possible so that I have still like the least amount of weight on the needles at the time that I do the neck, because sometimes doing that ribbing on a small circumference can be strenuous for my wrists or my hands. So rather than waiting until the sleeves are done and then doing the neck, which are the instructions in the pattern, I do the neck before I do the sleeves. It's a very small adjustment. The thing that I actually changed was that instead of picking up the neck stitches, doing the ribbing folding it in and then binding off after picking up stitches on the inside of the neck and binding off, just like knitting one and slipping over your needle. I picked up the stitches on the inside of the neck on another circular needle, and I bound off the live edge with that picked up edge using the Kitchener stitch. And I think that that makes for a stretchier band and also a cleaner finish on the inside of the neckband. That's a personal preference. It's something that I've tried on another sweater that I'll show you. And I think that's gonna be my method kind of here on out when it's a neckband that's picked up after the fact of knitting the sweater. All the details for this sweater can be found on my Ravelry page, which I've really been trying to keep more updated because I benefit personally from other people's notes on Ravelry, so I'm trying to contribute to that database of knowledge with my own notes on projects when I'm working on them or finishing them. The yarn that I used for this sweater is Drops Daisy, and this is the color Light Nougat. It's color number 11. And this is a 100% merino wool. It's untreated, it's not superwash. I'm really surprised and happy with the quality of this yarn. This is the second time for me using this yarn. The first time I used the natural color for my crystal pullover. This time I held this Drops Daisy with Issair Silk Mohair in the color 0. And this is a 75% kid mohair, 25% silk yarn. And this is definitely a fuzzy mohair. I don't know if I have something dark I can hold this. Let's see. I can hold this up against so you can see sort of, it's quite fluffy and it's really soft. I think that this might be the softest mohair that I have ever knit with. I have had some mohairs in the past that I've had a little bit of a prickle factor for me. This is not one of them. It's really, really soft to the touch. The only thing that I would say is a downside of this particular mohair is that it doesn't come in quite as wide of a color range as some of the other options. But even though these two colors are quite different from each other, I think they blend really nice in this sweater. So that is sweater number 18 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and that is my main knitting finish object this episode. The other project that I finished this time is the Era hat, which is a pattern that I'm now knitting for the third time. I knit it in Durium Natura Bernice, held together with the Albertine yarn from them, and it was in the prune color and the Confiture de Rose, and I gifted that hat to my sister-in-law yesterday for her 40th birthday. So I don't have that with me, but now you've seen it I think a few other times, and I have some pictures there for you. So after I finished this sweater, I needed to start another sweater, obviously, because I've really been enjoying having one large project on the needles at a time and one smaller project that I could take with me in case we're going somewhere in the car or to a doctor's appointment or something like that. But actually, even when I have those two projects on the needles, I usually only knit on one of them at a time, which is most often the sweater project, unless my sweater project comes to a point that it's on pause, and then I usually go back to the smaller project. But so because of that, my smaller projects actually take much longer to knit than my sweaters sometimes. After knitting this sweater and knitting the hat, I was really enjoying the Durium Natura Bernice, which is what I used for the hat. So one of the other projects in my 2024 box of knits is the Porcelain. It's actually called Porcelain Sweater Solo. That's a pattern by Le Knit, and I am knitting mine out of Bernice, held together with Thun Pergint from Sanes Garn. I have my little swatch here that I made. You can see that my contrast color is this sort of warm, soft brown. And I'll show you my sweater, which is now on pause because I'm out of the brown. I have this sweater in my Fringe Supply Co. bag that I made. So actually it's the Grainline Studio pattern for the field bag, which was originally a bag that was made by Fringe Supply Co. And now Fringe Supply Co. has closed down, I think, and Grainline Studio took over the pattern for this bag so that, yeah, not hand sewists, but home sewists, I guess you could say, could make the bag themselves. So this is the version that I made. It's a little bit small for sweater projects once the sweater is further along, but I use it anyway. So this is my porcelain sweater, and I love it. I really like it. So actually this one has quite a similar shape as the sweater number 18. And I think that's kind of why I also grabbed it next after this one, because I do like the shape of this and I'm enjoying wearing it. So both the combination of the shape and then the wanting to knit with the Bernice yarn again directly led me to this one. So as you can see, I have knit quite a bit on this. I have finished the body and one sleeve and the neckband, and then I got to here on the second sleeve before I ran out of the contrast color. So now my contrast color is waiting for me at the post pickup, which I will get tomorrow. The yarn that I'm using, I can just tell you now, it's also on Ravelry. The Sanes Thun Pergint is color 2641 for this natural color, and it's either 26 or 28. 52, which is this marled, heathered maybe? Malirad. Is that heathered brown color? And the natural mohair is Orgeat, and the brown one is called like hot chocolate, chocolat chaud, French. One thing that's interesting to me about this mohair is that it's 55% super kid mohair, 25% silk, and 20% wool. So there's two things that I think are a little bit unique about this when it comes to yarns that are on the market for like mohair fluff yarns. First of all, that it's super kid mohair, which is actually a finer quality or softer than kid mohair. So like this is kid mohair, 75% and 25% silk. 55% super kid mohair, 25% silk, and 20% wool. And I'm pretty sure the wool from this, it's in French on the label, but I'm pretty sure that it is the merino sheep from the region in France, in Provence, where this yarn is produced. It's just a little bit different in that it has this kind of a little slightly different content, and that it's the super kid mohair rather than just the mohair, but also this one is super soft too. So combining that with this definitely more rustic 100% Norwegian wool, which I would say is probably known for being a bit on the toothier, some could say scratchy side. It makes a really nice fabric. So this is, the gauge on this one is around 21 stitches per 10 centimeters or 4 inches, I think. So a DK gauge, and it just makes a really nice kind of drapey fabric. I have steam blocked the body of the sweater, and I have not steam blocked the sleeve. So you can maybe tell a little bit on the sleeve that there's a little bit of puckering when I'm changing from the colorwork sections to the plain single color section. But I'm not too concerned about it, because as I was knitting the body of the sweater, I did do steam blocking with my iron as I was going to make sure that it looked like everything was coming out evenly in the colorwork sections. The interesting thing about this pattern, I would say, is that unlike many colorwork sweaters, which are knit in the round, when you think about like a yoked colorwork sweater, that all the colorwork part happens in the round. And even if you think about a colorwork cardigan, they're most often steeked. So you still knit it in the round first and then steek it, which is cutting through the knitting. This particular pattern is knit back and forth for this first colorwork panel. So you're doing colorwork on both the right side and the wrong side of the piece, because that part's knit flat. So that was definitely a challenge, and it was kind of interesting to feel like a complete beginner at something again, especially something like knitting, which I now feel quite far away from being a beginner, I guess, because I've been knitting for a while now, and this really made me slow down and have to sit there really just one stitch at a time with a lot of concentration to make it through that section of colorwork that was knit flat. It's kind of funny because my Little Hearts pattern, which was my first ever cardigan pattern released on Ravelry back in 2015, I think. That one is knit flat in the colorwork, but that is a child's / baby sweater, really. And so there's not very many stitches, and it's also just so few rows that are done worked flat. And now I also have an option to steek it if you don't want to do colorwork flat. But this was, yeah, so I guess I'm just saying that this was significantly more challenging, I think. But it was worth it, and it was just that section on the top and of course on the back, and then the rest of the colorwork part has been done in the round. So that was kind of a relief to get to those parts. Yeah. The other thing about doing the colorwork flat in that part is that, of course, sometimes you would get to the end of one row and you would knit back only using one color, and then when you would start the next row, you would need the color that you left over here, so you actually had to cut your yarn and start again. So there was a few places on that first panel that you need to cut your yarn, and I still have those ends to weave in. But yeah, it's not too bad. And they'll weave in nicely to that selvage edge seam connecting the sleeve to the body, so it'll be fine. On this sweater, the neckband was also called for to be picked up after the front and the backs, and then knit in the rib up, folded down inside, and bound off along the neckband, just with doing like one stitch over the next. And because I had just finished this sweater and had success with using the Kitchener stitch to bind off the inside of the neckband, I decided to use that method again with this sweater, and I just think it has a really nice finish on the inside of the band. There you can see kind of what it looks like on the inside of the band there. I don't know. I just like that finish a lot. And I think that it makes it more elastic so that you don't get a hard edge that when you're pulling the sweater over, you have to tug or something to get it over your head. It's just much more smooth and more similar to the feeling of if you started from if you had cast on with the neckband, knit your ribbing for the length of the neckband, and then turned it in and knit two together around, which is like how I prefer to do neckbands. Sometimes if you start from the top down and do a neckband like that, you could also like leave a long tail and then stitch the neckband down. But to me, that also would leave kind of this harder edge that you would get also if you did the bind off on the inside of the neckband. I hope that makes sense. I'm just saying that this is my preferred method, and it's not what was written in the pattern. So that's the kind of only adjustment that I've made on this sweater. Now this one is, again, exploring some comfort zone adjacent aspects. The main thing being that the sleeve has very few decreases on it. So I said that it's quite a similar shape as this sweater, which it is, but I think that the sleeve is quite different. So in this sweater, you can see that the sleeve is actually quite tapered. So it starts out wide here at the connecting point with the body, but then it tapers down to really a fitted cuff. And on this one, oh, I haven't tried it on yet, so I don't know how I'll like it or not. You can see maybe that the sleeve is much more wide for the full length of the sleeve, and the cuff is wider at the end. It's something that I considered to modify in the pattern, and I guess I only modified it slightly by the fact that I am knitting the size 2 in the pattern for the body of the sweater and following the lengths for the size 2, but I actually knit the size 1 for the sleeve. So it's slightly smaller than the size 2 arm would be, but it still has this overall wider shape throughout the sleeve, and it doesn't end in a tighter taper like this one does. That one will be finished next time, I'm sure, because I am excited to finish it and just pick up that yarn to be able to finish off the colorwork part on that one. Since I didn't have the yarn to continue to work on that, and I got to that point I think on a Saturday evening, I decided to cast on another sweater, which at this moment I don't do very often, or I haven't, so far this year I haven't done that, having 2 sweaters on the go at a time, because I really have been liking having the single project, the single main sweater project going, and then maybe a small side project otherwise. But I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get from Saturday afternoon till Wednesday afternoon without another project on the needles. So I went through my box, and after a little bit of adjusting on some ideas that I've been having lately with the yarns that I have in there and paired with patterns that I want to knit, I decided to cast on the Colette pullover, and that's a pattern by Sari Nordlund, who is a Finnish knitwear designer. This pattern is one that has come out, I don't actually know when it was published, but it has a few different versions. There's a t-shirt version, a sweater version, and I think there may also be a Colette scarf. But I am knitting the pullover version. This is what I have so far on the back and on the front. So the left front is on hold at the moment, and the right front is just started. Now this looks a little bit small, and this is kind of an interesting sweater because the gauge on it to me is difficult to achieve, and I'm still not quite sure how she did it. For her, yeah, her gauge seems just not possible to me, but yeah, obviously it was possible because she knit the sweater. I've knit 3 different swatches for this sweater, and I still don't have the same exact gauge as in the pattern, but that's not a problem because I did a little bit of math to calculate what finished garment size I would have based on this stitch count that I was getting in my swatch. And I wrote a whole post about that over on Patreon, so if you're interested in more details about calculating sweater size and getting a good fit for yourself based on your personal swatch and your personal kind of stitch count, how you can make those changes and do those calculations is something that I've written actually 2 posts about over on Patreon, so check those out if you're interested. She uses a US size 4 needle. I don't have that off on the top of my head what that is. And she uses Knitting for Olive merino, which is a light fingering. I think there's 250 meters per 50 gram ball, so that would be, yeah, that's something like 500 meters per 100 grams, which is a thinner fingering yarn. I would say that 400 meters per 100 grams is more typical. So I have gone up to a US size 6, which is a 4mm needle, and still my gauge is tighter than her gauge. I'm also using a yarn that is thicker than her yarn, so you would think that with those 2 things combined, I would be getting a larger swatch. My sweater should turn out bigger, but my swatch is still smaller than her gauge. So it doesn't really matter because I like the fabric that I'm getting, and that's what's the most important to me, and that's why I've kind of shown how I go through the process of adjusting my size choice based on my own stitch count based on the fabric that I like. I first started out with a swatch using Bernice with Thune Pergint, and I got this one, which is beautiful, but I just decided that this isn't the one. I also swatched with Pearl Soho knitting yarn. This is also beautiful, but I think I will use this yarn for something else. In the end, I decided to go with this combination, Durerum Natura Albertine, 90% wool and 10% silk. And this is Durerum Natura. The color is Orgeat, O-R-G-E-A-T. That is my main color. And my mohair that I'm holding with that is the Bernice in the color Avone, A-V-O-I-N-E. I think that means oat. And again, this is the 55% Super Kid mohair, silk, and wool blend. And these 2 are, this is the one that I'm using for my porcelain sweater, and that matches perfectly with the Albertine color, because they're the same color. And originally I had planned to hold these 2 together, but actually I really like these 2 held together. This oat color just leans slightly pink. It has a little bit of a warmth to it, but at the same time I would say that it's a cool pink, and paired with this more neutral kind of color, I think makes a really nice fabric. I prefer if my creams and neutrals lean more red pink than yellow. So even like for wall colors and stuff in Thomas and I's bedroom, I have a white on the wall that leans pink rather than a white that leans yellow, which is a very common wall color here anyway, called like Stockholm's white. So this one is the combination of these two yarns, which is the cream plus the sort of leaning pink, and it just makes a really nice color, I think. That seemed to be a very long discussion about this yarn, but in the end I have decided to knit the second size. Yeah, I've decided to knit size 2, which will result in a size that's just slightly larger than the size 1, which should give me about 5 inches of positive ease at the chest. And I think the pattern calls for 6 to 8 inches of positive ease, but I think this will be a good amount for me. It's been really enjoyable to knit this so far. It kind of has like an addicting rhythm to it, because you're waiting for the cable and then like waiting for the next cable, so you kind of zoom through this basically ribbed section, and then you have this fun little eyelet section, and I don't know, it just sort of goes quickly in this almost striped cable progression. So that one has been a lot of fun to work on, and I will put that one again on hold to finish up my porcelain sweater once I get the yarn for that one tomorrow. The last knitting work in progress that I have on my needles is one that I don't think I've shared here yet. It is the Lamb by Claire somebody, and she has so many animal patterns on her Ravelry, in her Ravelry shop. A lot of them are free, including this one, and then there's a few that are paid for as well. They're very realistic animals. Right now this looks a little bit scary, taxidermy-ish, but I think it's gonna be super cute. This is a project that I am knitting for the new baby who will be here in May, hopefully. And it's gonna be a little stuffed animal lamb, if you couldn't guess based on the name. But yeah, right now it's a little scary looking, both because it looks like a lamb skin, but also because of the amount of ends that are currently dangling from it. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. It's basically sort of knit flat, and then I think will be stitched up in some degree, but the pattern is really well written, I think. Like it's just really interesting to trust in the pattern completely and go in kind of blind. Like you don't know, I mean, you sort of know which part you're working on, but I don't know, with a sweater, I'm knitting a sweater and I can like make decisions along the way if I want to lengthen here or lengthen there or whatever. This is kind of like, okay, this shaping is just happening and somehow this is going to turn into a lamb. So I don't know, it's just, yeah. Let me hold it still for a second. So here's an ear, for example. This is the little snout. I think this is some, I don't know if the eyes are gonna be there, some sort of eye socket. The neck, then we have the back here. And the tail is starting to form, which is also gonna be stitched up a little bit. And I need to close the butt, and then somehow the legs are gonna come from this. She has yarn suggestions in the pattern using the Drops Boucle yarn, I think, and I picked up this Issayer Boucle, which is a 100% alpaca boucle yarn. That's what I'm using for the main kind of sheepy curly part of the body, held together with Arwetta, which this is actually a little leftover nugget from my Pop Rocks sweater that I knit for Eloise. I'm also using Arwetta in other parts of the body for the nose, for example. These two are held together. I don't know what the color on this one is, but this one is color number 977. And this is a 80% superwash merino wool, 20% nylon yarn. Comes in 50-gram balls. So this part didn't take very long, but I haven't knit on this in a while now. This was kind of like the side project, but this wasn't the best choice for a side project because it requires looking at the pattern all the time because you're changing what you're doing, yeah, very often, very frequently. This is in a cute little project bag from my friend who's in Stitches Knits on Ravelry and Instagram. And this just has like a nice little kind of boxy shape to it with a drawstring. So I think like that kind of project is one that once my sweaters are done and I'm kind of like contemplating what's the next sweater on the needles, I might go back to that one so that I can be thinking about it while I'm knitting something. So that kind of wraps up my knitting projects that I've been working on the last couple weeks. So now I'll go into some of my sewing projects. I have one finished sewing project this month and one that's like technically a work in progress and one that's not started yet but is a plan. So this first one is made using gifted fabric from Minerva. I am a Minerva brand ambassador, so I received this fabric free of charge in exchange for a blog post. I'm also a Minerva affiliate, so if you purchase this fabric or one of the other colors using my link below, then I get a commission for that. Just to be upfront with it. So this is the Nova jumpsuit, which is a pattern by True Bias, and I finished this one with some slight modifications. I think maybe it will be this week or next week, I will be posting a sew with me video over on Patreon where I kind of go through my thoughts while in the middle of making this garment. But I made this to fit me during this last couple months of the pregnancy. And as such, I made some slight modifications, like the position of the waist elastic here, and otherwise I made it to pattern. You can see it's just a jumpsuit with an elasticated leg. It has a lined bodice part, which makes the edging look really nice and clean, so there's no additional binding or anything happening on the edge here. And I put in a little one-of-a-kind tag. One of a kind. You can see the inside of it. So I feel a little bit like a combination of a green bean or a fisherman, like in fisherman waders in this outfit, but it's really comfortable, so at this point I don't care that much. I've worn this one time so far with a Nico top, which is actually also a True Bias pattern. The True Bias Nico that I made in a cream merino jersey. It's a turtleneck pattern, and I wore that underneath this jumpsuit. I had originally thought about modifying the pattern to have long sleeves, but in the end I decided actually this gives me more flexibility because I could wear a short sleeve shirt underneath this, or a long sleeve shirt, or not a shirt. So it will give me more flexibility as the temperature starts to change as we get towards May, or my due date. The fabric that I used again is from Minerva. This is the khaki green color of their cotton This is actually, I think, the organic cotton jersey, and it's a 95% organic cotton, 5% lycra blend. And this is just my go-to fabric when it comes to jersey projects. So think t-shirts, think leggings, especially for children. T-shirts, leggings, shorts, like really everything. Jumpsuits, dresses, could also be comfortable with that. Pajamas, everything. I really like the 95% cotton, 5% elastic or lycra blend. This one comes in a ton of different colors. I've used, now this is actually I think the first time using the organic blend. They also have a regular cotton jersey blend, regular cotton, like non-organic cotton, I guess I would say. That one comes in a few more colors, but this one also comes in many different colors, so lots to choose from there. It washes really well, so like it doesn't get pilly because it is that natural cotton. A lot of times I think when you notice, like if, especially like a lot of ready-to-wear clothing now, which I sort of have this, I have this idea that maybe when I was a kid, more clothes were 100% cotton or 95% cotton, and now a lot of them have much more polyester blended in with them, and I think the polyester makes the fabric less, it just has like less longevity because it gets little pills quicker, and this is not the case with this fabric. It washes super nicely. It maintains its smooth finish to the fabric for many washes and wears. I mean, yeah, it never really bobbles. I've now had garments that I made for Eloise when she was a baby, or even more the clothes that she's had as a 1 and 2-year-old that now Nora has worn. And I mean, they've been washed hundreds of times and they look fine. You know, they're stained and stuff, but the fabric has held up really well. So definitely recommend that one. And yeah, you can follow me over on Patreon to get my sew with me video where I kind of go through my fitting process of that jumpsuit. But overall, I'm happy with it, and I think it will be a comfortable outfit to use when I'm, especially like working from home in these last couple of months. The other two sewing things I'm going to talk about, I have one other fabric here. This is the Neon Neppy fabric from Robert Kaufman. This is also from Minerva. You can use my link below. And this has like a charcoal background with neon green and pink specks throughout. And I have 4 meters of this fabric that I'm going to be using to create a duvet quilt. So I also have talked all about that idea and how I came to it over on Patreon. I will be using this one, which is also the Neon Neppy from Robert Kaufman. I purchased this blue one myself. This was gifted, but these will be combined with a patchwork motif for this duvet that I'm going to be making shortly. That's a little bit of kind of an experiment project that we'll see how it turns out and how it holds up over time. Finally, I have this gorgeous fabric from Art Gallery Fabrics. It's one of their rayons, again from Minerva. This is a gifted fabric. I have 1.5 meters of this, and my plan is to make the NYX blouse. I think I'm gonna do this one. That's my hope, that I have enough to do view B. And if I don't, I will instead be doing the Atelier Jupe Frida blouse, which is a 3/4 length, 3/4 sleeve button down that I've made in the past in a fabric that I wasn't super in love with. So I want to try it again. It might be this if I don't have enough of this to make the NYX blouse. So I really just need to trace off my size in that pattern in the NYX blouse and lay it out on my fabric to see if I will have enough of that so that I can get going on that project. Because I think that will be a nice summer, let's be honest. Spring here is still too cold for a floaty blouse like that. It will be a nice summer top. Okay, so I think that is all of my works in progress and kind of my sewing projects as well. So that's kind of, yeah, where I am right now. I'm not really looking forward to what I'll be working on next. I mean that not that I'm not looking forward to it. I'm always looking forward to next projects, but I haven't thought about really what will be next on the needles too much. Because yeah, I recently started the Colette pullover, so I'll finish off the porcelain and then move on again to the Colette. But yeah, that is what I've been up to, and that's it for this time. So be sure to check out the pop rock sweater over on Ravelry. You can also find it for sale on lovecrafts.com. And until next time, happy making. Bye.